break there. But pizza beckoned. Alright, so where are we? So we've got a whole bunch of C's. These are the contingent things, and we've got R's, the reasons, and these things, the C's and R's might be groups of things, pluralities of things, and so we've got a many-to-many or plurality-to-plurality grounding relation going on here. So what if the R's are contingent? R's cannot be totally disjoint from C's, for in that case R's would be necessary rather than contingent. Yes, because yep, that's fair. So either R's are just C's or R's overlap C's. That is, there is at least one truth among the R's that is also among the C's. So that makes, because contingency spoils the well, that makes all of the reasons for the things, that makes them contingent reasons. If R's are just C's, then R's cannot be the full ground of C's, since grounding is irreflexive. Yeah, you can't have circular ground, then you can't have something self-grounding itself, or maybe you can, but not for principle of sufficient reason. So R's overlap C's, meaning there are some that are not C's, but some are. But I think we should accept general irreflexivity, which is the principle that necessarily for any x's and y's, if x's and y's overlap, then x's are not the full ground of y's. General irreflexivity permits the possibility that x's might collectively be the full ground for some y's that are properly among the y's, provided the y's and x's do not themselves overlap. Yeah. Okay, so it's a bunch of overlapping things, but like some overlap here, some overlap there, and then like you're trying to get the reasons for one to not overlap those, but then you've got yourself a general circular picture there, because if some of them overlap here and some overlap there, can get a little complicated, but you want this general irreflexivity for grounding. You want the ground to be more fundamental, more of a ground than what it's grounding. We now have the materials to straightforwardly derive a formal contradiction. Something has to go. Know that this argument is immune to the criticism of Van Inwagen's original argument, since C's is emphatically not a conjunction of contingent proposition, but rather just are all the contingent propositions. Yeah, so you've got a plurality, it's not a single conjunction. So in this case, we can't say that we can't say that the dag-nabbit analysis. We can't say that the individual contingent, like, is this the final one? I don't know. We can't say that the individual contingent propositions collectively ground C's, since the individual contingent propositions are just C's. Yeah, because it wouldn't be reflexive then. The general irreflexivity of ground saves this version of Van Inwagen's argument. Okay, so in this case, we can say that the individual contingent propositions collectively ground. They don't. It's not the thing. This argument against PSR is powerful. It isn't decisive, though. One might challenge general irreflexivity. That's what I was saying was complicated earlier. Yeah. For example, it appears to be a consequence of the logic of many grounds developed by Littland that general irreflexivity is false. Okay, so you can do something and maybe it's okay. But by my lights, general irreflexivity is more plausible than the logic Littland proposes, and the denial of general irreflexivity certainly does not have the same epistemic credentials as the claim that the conjunction is always collectively grounded in its conjuncts. Okay, fair enough, but that's your opinion. It's just like your opinion, man. When developing a logic in scare quotes, that is a rigorous system of governing principles. That's a questionable definition of logic, but okay, we'll grant it for now. For contentious philosophical notion, I mean, I'd just say an axiom system, not necessarily logic. Well, we'll see. It is paramount to hold fixed the clearest intuitive judgments about the notion. Yes, that's right. Littland's logic might be correctly characterize some related notion, but I think it does not capture the correct notion, the correct logic of plural full of ground. Okay, but we don't know. That's just like your opinion, man. There are other ways one could challenge the argument against PSR. Here are three such ways. First, one could embrace rather than run from necessitarianism. necessitarianism and hence deny the initial assumption from which both Van Inwagen's original argument and my revised version of it began. See Lynn Descripta for a thorough discussion of necessitarianism. Those who find necessitarianism congenial are invited to view this paper as presenting an argument for the conclusion that PSR implies. Necessitarianism, that is at least as strong as Van Inwagen's argument. Okay, if you like necessitarianism, that's a very long word. Second, one could deny that grounding induces necessitation. This denial is made by Skiles, but similarly one could deny that sufficient reason must always entail that for which they are reason. Could deny that sufficient reasons must always entail that for which they are reasons. Okay, perhaps in some cases sufficient reasons merely incline without necessitating. Okay, yeah, I was like, that's a Leibnizian thing, and in the note, that's right. Third, one could deny that there is a plurality that is all the contingent truths. There's a plurality. Yeah, I said this earlier. There's a question about what all the contingent truths taken together actually amount to. Instead, one might hold that the concept contingent truth is indefinitely extendable. That is, for every plurality of contingent truths, there is a rule that tells one how to produce a more comprehensive plurality of contingent truths. See Levy 2016 for defense of this view. But one could also respond in exactly this way to Van Inwagen's original argument, as I did. For what it is worth, I would reject these challenges to the argument against PSR. Necessitarianism is a non-starter for me, though as noted earlier, it has been defended. Pakshe, its advocates, I doubt that there is real metaphysical work to be done by grounding. I doubt that there is real metaphysical work to be done by a grounding relation that does not induce entailment. Okay, so he wants to, grounding sort of has to do with entailment. So, to accept the indefinite extensibility of contingent truth in order to save the PSR is to misjudge the price of this way of accepting indefinite extensibility. For on this view, there are always more fundamental facts to be found. There are always more fundamental facts to be found. Okay, for the contingent truths whose introduction is licensed by the rule that generates them are always deeper grounds for the contingent truths with which we began. The rule that generates more is deeper. Yeah, maybe. Contrast this with, for example, the alleged indefinite extensibility of set. Perhaps for any plurality of sets, there is a rule that tells one how to produce a more comprehensive plurality of sets. Okay, yeah, take the union of them or whatever. But the outputs of this rule are always sets that are less fundamental than the inputs which we began, because the additional sets are those that have their predecessors as elements and thereby grounded in them. In short, accepting the indefinite extensibility of set commits one to a hierarchy of increasingly less fundamental entities, while accepting the indefinite extensibility of contingent truths in order to save the PSR commits one to a hierarchy of increasingly more fundamental facts. The ontological price of this way of saving PSR is infinitely weighty, and if this is the price one must pay to salvage PSR, better to consign PSR to the wrecking yard. Okay, I'm not 100% certain about increasingly more fundamental facts here. Just that there are more, and that it's the parallels with sets only gets you so far. There may not be these hierarchies set up exactly there. It just may be that it is indefinite to begin with, and there may be some fundamental indefinite property of trying to figure out what all the contingent truths are. So this whole sort of hierarchical argument where you're like building them up from there, you're finding more and more fundamental things that may not be actually relevant to the problem here. So I'm not sure about this response. The argument against PSR cast in terms of grounding is powerful, and it is not at least as powerful as Van Inwagen's original argument, which did not appeal to grounding, while avoiding the objection from grounding that troubled the original argument. This is exactly what I aim to show. Oh, and it's over. Okay. Yeah, okay. Well, that was a lot less painful than doing that long paper the other day. Let's see. Reasonably short. I mean, let's see. So what are the problems here? Oh, what's good here? We should also talk about that. Go back up to the top real fast. Okay. Yeah, so basically, people argued against Van Inwagen, and then McDaniel here wants to recast it in terms of grounding and then just regenerate the principle of sufficient reason. Well, I mean, I like this. This is good. It's updating an older argument. We've got some nice throwbacks to Leibniz in here. Not exactly this general irreflexivity problem that you get with grounding. Okay. It's the combination of this general irreflexivity and then this issue where you have to have necessary truths can only ground other necessary things, but contingent truths, if you have all of them, then their reasons for grounding them have to also be included with that. So that combination there is where you're getting your contradiction here. To be fair, I don't believe in the principle of sufficient reason at the moment, so I am not strongly motivated to defend it. This argument, though, that Kris McDaniel puts forward for it, again, depends on exactly how you're understanding groups of contingent truths and groups of contingent reasons for those contingent truths. So, did McDaniel do a good enough job in convincing us of that that those groups can't do what the proponent of principle of sufficient reason wants? Perhaps. If you agree to this sort of picture, I think the argument generally goes through. The question is, of course, exactly what do you mean by groups and how are they structured? And that's this is the indefinite extensibility of contingent truth. This is really where everything hangs. But anyway, I hope you like it. If anyone watches this and wants to suggest a paper, I will try to review it. Thank you.